Metro Exodus is one of the best games I've ever played. Everything from the story to the characters and the world is amazing, so welcome to the last episode of the series where we discuss the Metro games. Check the other two videos first because without them this one would probably not make a lot of sense, and maybe consider subscribing and leaving a like. With all that said, enjoy watching. The game starts 1 year after the battle for D6, and we see a cutscene in which Artyom tells us of a dream of his. A dream to find people living outside Moscow, because there is no way only in Moscow people manage to survive the nuclear war. In search of his dream, Artyom takes frequent trips to the surface with a radio to search for other settlements or humans outside Moscow transmitting something over the radio. But these trips that he is taking are becoming more and more dangerous, and eventually, after narrowly escaping death, Anna, who is now his wife, and Colonel Miller try to persuade him to give up because these trips are affecting more people than he realizes. Artyom agrees, but he wants to go on one final mission, and Anna decides to go with him to make sure everything goes smoothly, but then the unexpected happens. They see a train running through the ruins of Moscow. Naturally, they are stunned, but they decide to follow it to see where it's going and who's on board. They get intercepted by a car. They think it's from the Rangers, but it's from Hansa, and they get captured. Inside the car there are also two people from a village outside Moscow, so Artyom's theory that there are people out there living their lives is correct. The car takes a sudden stop near the outskirts of Moscow, and then the Hansa soldiers take the people from the village outside the car and they prepare to execute them, but Artyom tries to help them. Unfortunately, he fails, and all of them, including Artyom, get shot. The only reason he lived is because Hunter's medallion that he got in the first game stopped the bullet. The Hansa soldiers take Anna captive, and Artyom goes after them, making his way into a huge base. Inside, he meets a man called Yermak, who is the train conductor. He tells Artyom that he will help him, and together they find Anna. They also find the radio waves jammer that the Hansa soldiers use to stop anyone from contacting Moscow, and after they destroy it, they see radio signals from all around the world. After this, the three of them steal the train, but they get captured by Hansa soldiers, but the soldiers surrender when the Rangers show up. Because they know too much, Hansa sends another train after them, but after Artyom blows it up, they lose their pursuit. Alright. That might have been a lot to take in, so let's take a moment to understand what is going on. Hansa was jamming the communications in Moscow because they believed that large parts of the country were being occupied by NATO forces, so they jammed the communications so that NATO would think no one survived in Moscow, and that way they wouldn't attack again. This is obviously not true because in a nuclear war no one wins, so they isolated themselves from the world for 20 years for basically nothing. We learn all this from Miller, who learned this only 6 months ago. So this is clearly a very highly kept secret, seeing that not even the commander of the Rangers knew until a few months back. That's why they executed the travelers that came from outside Moscow, because they believed they were NATO spies, which is again obviously not true. Miller also tells us about something called the ARC project, a safe haven created by the former leaders of Russia in the Yamantau region. Seeing that they can't go back to Moscow because they would be executed, they all agree to move onward towards the ARC. But before that, they named the train Aurora after a Roman goddess. After about 700 kilometers, they reach a bridge over the Volga river, but as they are about to cross it, they get attacked by some bandits. Everyone is fine, but the bandits damage the boiler on the Aurora, so they need to stop to give Yermak some time to repair it. Over in the distance, the group could see a church that rang its bells when the train arrived, so Artyom and Anna go there to check it out. And here you can see for the first time how this game is different from the others, because even though it still has a linear story, the world is more open and you can explore more. And this is what I like most about the game. The fact that you can explore the environment, because the game looks so good and it's so immersive that I found myself wanting more to explore, and more often than not I would abandon the main story to just explore the different regions our journey takes us through. When we get to the church, we find that a cult that worships a giant mutated fish operates there. This cult is led by a man called Silencius, and the base idea of his teachings is that we should be anti-technology. Think of him sort of as the post-apocalyptic Unabomber minus the bombing, which would kinda make him just the Una. When we get inside the church, the cultists trap us and they call a group of bandits to kill us. Trapped in the church are also Katya and her daughter Nastasia. They give us information about the men that control the bridge that we need to cross, and we tell them to make their way to the train. We also manage to escape the church, and then we all regroup at the Aurora. Miller keeps asking Katya if she knows anything about NATO occupation forces, because he keeps believing the lie that he was told by Hansa. Katya naturally says she doesn't know anything, but she mentions that a mechanic lives in a nearby port. This mechanic would be very helpful because remember, we need to fix the Aurora, so Artyom's next task is to find him and convince him to join us. We get there and we meet Crest, and he doesn't need much convincing to get him to join us because there's nothing to do on the Volga, so we send him to the Aurora. When we leave the port, Miller tells us that Anna went to investigate some antennas, but she lost contact with the group. Seeing that her last known location was close to us, we go there to try and find her. We end up in a bunker and we find Anna unconscious because she inhaled some toxic gas. Keep this in mind because it will play a bigger role later in the story, but we get her out and we return to the Aurora. This game also has a day and night cycle, and across the map you can find these safe zones that serve sort of like a hub area because you can sleep there, but most importantly, these places have workbenches where you can equip and craft weapons and bullets. This game changed a lot from the others in the way that you can no longer buy weapons and ammo, but now you must gather crafting ingredients throughout the map, then make your way to one of these workbenches and craft what you need. You also have the ability to craft medkits and other basic stuff on the go because you have this portable workbench, but you can't make everything you need using this one. The game also introduces small side quests, as when we get back to the Aurora, members of our crew will ask us to fetch some items such as a guitar and a teddy bear for Anastasia. But now I realize that I didn't really explain who the members of the Aurora are, and seeing that they play a big part in the game, we should discuss them. The ones you should know so far are Miller, Artyom and Anna, so we won't talk too much about them. One thing to mention is that after Miller lost his legs in the battle for D6, he got these really cool prosthetic legs. The first member of the crew is Stepan. He is a heavy weapon specialist and he was also part of the battle for D6. Next up we have Idiot, who is Miller's right hand man. I don't know why he is nicknamed Idiot, but we move on. The Spartan that comes up next is the most interesting out of them all in my opinion. His name is Sam and he is a US Marine. He was part of the soldiers stationed at the US Embassy in Moscow and he was saved by Miller from a mob that wanted to lynch him. He also got his own DLC, but we'll discuss the DLCs for this game later on. Duke is the youngest member of the crew and he is described as the most reckless out of them all. Alyosha is the first scout of the group and he was previously a police guard. Damir is the medic and he was born in Kazakhstan, and this detail will play a part later on in the story. And lastly we have Tokarev, who is the weapons expert and the man that would sometimes give us upgrades for our weapons. With all this in mind, let's get back to the story. When we get back to the Aurora, Miller argues with Stefan because he doesn't want to let Katya and Nastasia come with us because the journey would be too dangerous. After a bit of convincing, Miller finally agrees, but now we must get some train cars because there isn't enough space for all of us on the train. Luckily, there is an old train depot nearby where Crest tells us that we would find what we need. We make our way to the abandoned building, and after a fight with these new enemies the game introduces that are basically zombies, and after a close encounter with the fish that the cult in the church worshipped, we get the train car and we get back to the Aurora. Crest and Yermak repaired the train, so we are ready to set out, but now we need to find a way to cross the bridge without getting shot. Crest tells us about some smugglers that are set to come to resupply the bridge outpost, so we devise a plan to possess them and then open the gate of the outpost for the Aurora to pass. We take a squad of rangers to where the smugglers disembark, and we slowly take them out and steal their boat. Then Artyom and Duke make their way to the bridge. Silencius is preaching to the guards of the outpost so we can easily sneak past them. We reach Silencius and we make a deal with him to let us pass. He opens the gates and we and Duke jump on the Aurora, so now we have free passage to the Yamantau region where the Ark is. After a few days on the road, Miller tells Artyom that he managed to talk with the Ark project and he will play the conversation he had with them. While we listen to it, it's very clear that the people we talk to don't want to actually help us and in fact want to ambush us somehow, because they ask questions like how many of us are there and what is our training and stuff like that. But Miller didn't see through those lies because he was blinded by the fact that the voice he was talking to referred to himself as the defense minister, and Miller, who is a career soldier from before the war, viewed this as a great honor, and you can really hear in his voice that he is very proud to have talked to such important people. So because we didn't see this trap, we move onwards towards Yamantau. When we get there, the region is pretty desolate, which again is a sign that something isn't right, but we move ahead anyway. Miller, Artyom, Anna, Sam, Crest and Stepan make their way to a huge bunker embedded in the mountain. When we make our way inside, Artyom, Miller and Anna go to meet the leaders while the other rangers guard the train cart. But to no one's surprise, when we get to the command center, we get captured and it's revealed that the people that run the facility are in fact cannibals that lead people to the base in order to eat them. They take Anna away to have her examined by a doctor because she has a weird cough, and the rest of them prepare to eat us and Miller. But Sam and Stepan come to our rescue. They set us free and we begin to fight our way through the bunker to find Anna. While we fight, we can really see how many cannibals there are because they just don't stop coming. In the end, we find Anna and the doctor and we set her free, and she kills the doctor right before he was about to say something. Also keep this in mind for later on. After this, we escape the bunker and we make our way back to the Aurora and we begin another journey. After a month or so, we reach the desert near the Caspian Sea and we are forced to stop because we are running low on supplies and fuel. Nearby to where we stopped, we can see that there are people, so we begin to investigate if they are friendly or not. In this area there is also a satellite base from before the war that would contain maps that would indicate the level of radiation in different areas, maps that would help us find a habitable spot way faster. So we have our objectives clear as day: find water and fuel and get those maps. While we explore the shores of the Caspian Sea, it doesn't take too long to realize that the area is being controlled by some slave owners called the Munai Bailer, which roughly translates to oil drillers. They are former workers of a oil company that operated on the Caspian Sea, and after the war they got their hands on large quantities of oil that they used to gain power and enslave the natives of the area, natives that Damir calls his people because remember, he is of Kazakhstani origin. They are led by a man called the Baron that we can hear often over the radio. This Baron also invented some sort of religion that worships the Holy Flame. Using this Holy Flame, the Munai Bailer managed to brainwash the slaves to the extent that they don't consider themselves human anymore. Located in the area, there is also a woman called Jewel that seems to be one of the last locals not enslaved by the Munai Bailer. Miller tells us to go help her because the lighthouse where she has her base is being attacked by the slavers. In return, she said she will guide us to the satellite facility because her mother used to work there and she got inside before trying to find out what happened to her. We go to the lighthouse and we kill her attackers, and then we make our way to the satellite facility. Before we go inside, Jewel asks us to find what happened to her mother. After we fight through those annoying spider bugs, we find her mother and we get a picture of her family. We also find the maps we were looking for. After this, we make our way to where we set camp and we talk to Miller. He tells us that the Baron controls all the drinking water in the region and that he spoke to him, but his terms to give us some water were unacceptable, so we must find a way to get some. Damir found out that all the water comes from a place called the Oasis, so the two of us make our way to this oasis. Artyom manages to open the gate to the complex and the two of them steal a truck full of water. On the way back, Artyom falls asleep, but he is awakened by gunfire. The Aurora is being attacked by the slavers. We fight them off, and now the final thing we need to get is the fuel for the train. The only place we can get that is from the oil rig that the Baron's men use as their base. Artyom, Jule and Damir storm the base, and after a fight with the Baron that ends up in his death, Artyom and Damir manage to open the gates of the base and leave with the fuel. Jule thanks us that we helped her so much in setting her people free, and we make our way to the Aurora and we begin to go eastward again. After a talk with Anna regarding her cough, we go to celebrate Stepan and Katya's wedding, but during the celebration this happens.
Happy. Oh, and Gorka! Gorka! Gorka!
Anna begins coughing blood and she tells us that because she inhaled the toxic gas in the bunker on the Volga, her lungs are collapsing. This is what the doctor in the bunker in Yamantau was about to say before Anna killed him. After this, Artyom, Miller and Katya talk about what to do, and Katya tells about an experimental drug used to cure lung problems her mother told her about. She says she doesn't remember the name right now, but she is sure it was produced in the city of Novosibirsk. In the meantime, Miller found what seems a habitable place using the maps we recovered from the satellite facility. This place is located in the Taiga region of Russia. There is still hope that the clean air from this region would help Anna recover without the medicine, so Artyom and Alyosha begin scouting the area. We take the rail cart, but the train tracks can't hold our weight and we crash in the river. Fortunately, a local named Olga saves us and tells us to hide. The area is inhabited by two groups, the pioneers and the pirates. In the Taiga region, there was a campsite and a school, and when the war broke out, the leader of the camp taught the children how to survive and they formed a community. But after some time, the community divided into the two groups I mentioned earlier. Even though they are separate now, they still kind of worship the leader of the camp that taught them everything, naming him the teacher. After Artyom recovers, he finds a crossbow, and after sneaking past a group of pirates and a mutated bear like the one from Metro Last Light, he gets caught in a hunting net. The pirates come to kill him, but he is saved by the giant bear that the locals call the Master of the Forest. He manages to escape and make his way to a pioneer camp where he learns Alyosha was captured and he awaits trial. After this, he makes his way to a church on a cliffside where the teacher is buried, and there he meets Olga, the woman that saved him earlier. She is the leader of the pioneers and she tells Artyom she freed Alyosha and she took him up to a nearby dam. She tells us to make our way there as well. On the way, we meet the Admiral. He was the former leader of the pirates, but now he is just a crippled and insane old man. Anyway, we make our way through some tunnels and we meet with Alyosha that tells us we can't inhabit this zone because the dam is cracked and soon the whole valley will be flooded. After this, we have another fight with the bear, but this time we kill it. Then Olga shows up and she and Alyosha have a moment. He tells her to get her people out of the valley, then we zipline to the Aurora. Unfortunately, we have bad news awaiting. Anna's state is deteriorating and at this pace she won't last long. Fortunately, Nastasia found the name of the medicine that could help her. It was being produced in Novosibirsk at a place called the Institute. So we set out for the city.
「
On the way, we learn that Novosibirsk has an interesting nickname, the Dead City. The reason for this is because the radiation levels in the city are 8 times the ones in Moscow, rendering the city very dangerous. Because of this, whoever goes in there needs some protective suits. Unfortunately, Yermak has enough material for only 2, one for Artyom and one for Miller. They are the ones that should go, because as Miller puts it, they are responsible for the state Anna is in. Artyom is guilty because they left Moscow because of him and his dream, and Miller is guilty because he was the one who sent Anna to investigate the antennas that led her to falling into the bunker. So they suit up and take the car into the ruins of the Dead City. After a while they make their way into the metro system, where they find a little kid named Kirill. On the way to Kirill, they saw signs of a war being fought in the underground because there are bodies everywhere. We can learn what happened through the first DLC of this game, called the Two Colonels. The DLC follows Kirill's father, Colonel Kolebnikov, during the downfall of the station. The DLC also makes parallels between Miller and Kolebnikov, moving from the present day into the past. The reason the war broke out in the metro of Novosibirsk is because of a drug called the green stuff. It still amazes me that they just couldn't find the name for it and just called it the green stuff, but what this drug does, it improves resistance to radiation. And in a city so irradiated such as Novosibirsk, it's natural that it became an important resource. The war broke out because the leadership started to confiscate the green stuff from the people because they needed it to escape the city. The people revolted and the only survivors were Kirill and his father. In an attempt to find a habitable place for the both of them, Colonel Kolebnikov made his way to a nearby SATCOM center to find maps of the radiation level but succumbed to the radiation. This is one of the best DLCs I've played because of the story and the ideas that it touches, such as morality and the truth. Plus the ending sequence where Miller gives a monologue on how much he loves Anna and Artyom nearly made me cry. But let's get back to the main story. Kirill tells Artyom where to find the institute and Miller where to find the SATCOM center where his father went after the maps. He also gives them one vial of this green stuff. So Artyom will make his way to the institute to find the medicine for Anna, and Miller will go to the SATCOM center to find the maps. During his trip to the institute, Artyom begins having visions that make him push onward even though the radiation is killing him. Many people believe that these visions were induced by the little dark one from the last game because we can actually see him following us. So it's nice to think that the dark one we saved actually cares for us. When we get to the institute, we discover that these mutated gorillas live there. These might be the creepiest enemies in the whole series because they communicate telepathically and appear to know how to talk. After we sneak past them and after having some more visions that make us push further, we finally find the medicine. But right as we are about to leave, we get attacked by one of these gorillas and we fall off the roof. As everything seems lost, Miller shows up and gives us his shot of the green stuff, basically dooming himself to save us. He gets us in the car and we find Kirill and we make our way to the Aurora. We pass out but we are awakened by Kirill, who tries to drive the car. We get up and we see Miller dead in his seat. We pick up the wheel and we get to the train where we pass out. The whole crew gives us a blood transfusion because our blood is so irradiated it will kill us. During this we pass out and we see Miller talking to us. He says that he loved us like his son and he is glad that we are with Anna. He shows us the place that he found to be habitable and his final wish is to be buried near Lake Baikal. We wake up and everything is fine. The game ends with Miller's funeral and Artyom becoming the new leader of the Spartans. The story of this game is brilliant. If you watch so far, I would still recommend playing the game because it's an experience you won't forget. Metro Exodus has one final piece of content, and namely a DLC called Sam's Story. This DLC follows Sam, the Marine from our group, in his journey after the main game. He wants to find a way to go back home to San Francisco. This DLC is also amazing, play it if you didn't. But this brings us to the end of the video. If you watched so far, thank you. I hope something from what I had to say was interesting to you. I don't know exactly what the next video will be, but I will see you soon. Goodbye.